If you're going to create an iconic Spider-Man suit, you have to first understand why it's the best superhero suit, period.
Bill Roseman, everybody, speaking nothing but facts, as usual. But anyways, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another very exciting Marvel's Avengers related video. So, of course, with the latest Marvel's Avengers news update making major waves as you would expect it to, we now know that it is officially confirmed that Spider-Man will indeed be featured as a playable character within the roster of Marvel's Avengers exclusively on the PlayStation platform. And like we know already, not only will each hero come fully equipped with brand new story missions to partake in, as well as new gear pieces to equip and skills to unlock, which is then followed directly by a massive assortment of costumes that you can wear for your particular hero. Not to mention that the types of suits that will be featured within Marvel's Avengers follows an extremely similar blueprint to what we experienced within Spider-Man PS4, where in this case, each specific suit within Marvel's Avengers will range from its appearances like what we've seen in the comics, movies, as well as never before seen original designs. And just knowing that Spider-Man PS4 by itself managed to acquire a total of 42 alternate costumes within a single Spider-Man game, which also results as a record as the most alternate suits to be featured within a single superhero game, this surely adds on even more higher expectations as to what types of costumes we can expect for Spider-Man to wear within Marvel's Avengers. And since I have done these top 5 suit list videos for every other hero that has been revealed so far, I'm obviously going to continue the trend by talking about our favorite wall crawler himself with that of the Amazing Spider-Man. Now, just as a heads up for my personal suit list of Spidey within the Avengers project, all the suits that are featured within this list are actually not alternate suits that we already saw within Marvel's Spider-Man. And even though we already had the inclusion of every single Marvel Cinematic Universe suit to be featured within Spider-Man PS4, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if they also included those same exact suits within Spider-Man's costume roster in Marvel's Avengers, considering how we will most likely receive the other Marvel Cinematic Universe costumes for the other Avengers down the line one way or another. But as for whether or not those specific suits end up becoming actually unlockable just by playing the game, or simply having to pay for them by using microtransactions, is another story entirely. And mark my words, if any type of ballistic situation occurs revolving around the Sam Raimi suit to be inputted within Spider-Man's costume list in Marvel's Avengers, similar to all the crazy situations that occurred revolving around that suit during the Spider-Man PS4 days, then I am going to be shutting that down almost immediately, because no one deserves to be harassed by simply not including a specific costume within a video game. And if your personal pick isn't on my list, that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't want to see the costume within the game, but rather I just want to see these suits inputted in the most. But regardless, I won't be upset as to whether or not these suits actually end up making it in the game one way or another. However, if there is any suit on my list that I want more than anything to be featured within Marvel's Avengers, especially now knowing that it is confirmed that the Spider-Man that does exist within this game's universe is completely different than what we experienced within Spider-Man PS4, I still would personally love to see this suit be featured no matter what. And even if it turns out this suit actually ends up being locked behind a microtransaction paywall, I may just have to give in and buy the dang thing, considering how this is one of, if not my personal favorite Spider-Man costume of all time. And if you've been following my channel long enough, I think you are well aware as to what that is. None other than the red, white, and blue blur itself that we all know from Spider-Man PS4 with that of the advanced suit. Insomniac absolutely nailed it with modernizing Spider-Man's design while also pulling off a fresh new twist on the standard Spider-Man costume regimen. Having all of the white bits on this costume being made out of carbon fiber in order to give Spider-Man more protection while in combat, while also making the red bits of the suit much more armored and protected compared to the blue bits of the suit, which actually offer a lot more maneuverability and freedom while traversing around New York. It's simply a one-of-a-kind design which I personally wouldn't expect any other Spider-Man suit to top at this point. However, given the fact that Crystal Dynamics' version of Spider-Man is going to have his suit be inspired roughly off the Steve Ditko and John Romita Sr. runs, it makes me that much more curious to see exactly what Crystal has up their sleeve when making their own unique Spider-Man design. But as for whether or not it'll be more appealing than the advanced suit in Spider-Man PS4 is all a matter of preference. And as for a reason why I actually believe this suit will be in Marvel's Avengers is because that Spider-Man is again an exclusive character only tied to the PlayStation platform for the Avengers game as a whole. And even though Crystal's version of Spider-Man is completely different from Insomniac's, I still think it would be a cool benefit of the PlayStation partnership if Sony were to include the advanced suit as an alternate skin to wear simply as a cosmetic for Spider-Man within Marvel's Avengers. And due to the fact that my pipe dream of the Marvel gaming universe is dead in the water at this point, having the advanced suit within Marvel's Avengers would be the last saving grace that I could expect for Crystal to input within this game. But as for whether or not that actually ends up happening, we'll just have to wait and see. Now, after that long explanation as to why I love the advanced suit so much, we're now moving on to the second pick on my list, which actually relates to an alternate universe version of Spider-Man, which isn't Peter Parker, but instead it actually relates to the alter ego of the Incredible Hulk, none other than Bruce Banner. For example, Peter Parker isn't the only Spider-Man. We also have Miles Morales as the Ultimate Spider-Man, Miguel O'Hara as Spider-Man 2099, Hobie Brown as Spider-Punk, and in this case, for the next suit on my list is actually Bruce Banner as Bullet Point Spider-Man. Now, for me personally, I think this would make a whole bunch of sense to include a different character's version of Spider-Man within Marvel's Avengers, seeing how in this case it actually isn't Peter as Spider-Man, but rather that of Bruce Banner. And to elaborate upon a brief synopsis of exactly who Bullet Point Spider-Man is, Dr. Bruce Banner felt personally responsible for Peter Parker's transformation, having been one of the original inventors of the Gamma Bomb. So, he worked night and day to try to find the origin of the Hulk, and came to the conclusion that he needed a blood sample to cure him. When he proposed this idea to Dr. Richards, he was refused, since S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't afford to lose him in a run-in with the Hulk. Upset and distracted, Banner went back to work, beginning to dissect a spider that survived the same blast that Peter did. The spider actually ended up biting Bruce, which then altered his DNA, but since he was bitten as an adult, his body was unable to cope, and he went on a rampage, which was then followed by escaping the military installation and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s grasp for a total of 2 years. And after a few years of being in custody, along with gene therapy and heavy medication, Dr. Bruce Banner became the newest member of the S.H.I.E.L.D. family, none other than the Amazing Spider-Man. So in short, this is just a very cool alternate universe of Spider-Man, which I think would actually fit really well as a cosmetic item within Marvel's Avengers. I really dig the black and green look that this suit has, as well as the orange belt and eye lenses tailored on Spider-Man's mask. And given the fact that we will be able to equip different gear pieces which do pertain to specific types of adjustments to your playstyle, it'd surely be very fitting if you were to equip Gamma pieces tailored to the Bullet Point Spider-Man suit. But moving on to the third pick on my list actually relates to a Spider-Man suit which I personally don't think of all that often. Considering that one of the main regions that we will be able to explore within Marvel's Avengers directly relates to that of a space station, I think it would be cool if we were to get a much more cosmic related costume tailored to Spider-Man's overall style. And what's more cosmic of an outfit for Spider-Man with none other than the Captain Universe costume. Now, in the case of Captain Universe, he really isn't that of a person, much less than a costume. But despite all of that, simply being an omnipotent cosmic entity does have its fair share of responsibilities. And who better to carry all that responsibility than Peter Parker himself? Now, while this suit in particular doesn't necessarily scream the name Spider-Man, it still has a pretty recognizable look which differs from that of the other Spidey suits. Primarily with that of the dark blue and white color palette which surrounds the overall layout of the suit, with a vividly glowing constellation pattern surrounding the entirety of the upper body, which, given the specific comic lore, it ends up merging with the costume of any being it chooses to mix its essence with, such as Spider-Man himself. And because Captain Universe is supposed to represent all the powers of, well, the universe, this union actually gives Peter Parker more power than he's ever had before. Though you can only really tell that Spidey is still in that suit due to his amounts of quips, as well as the fact that his face mask is showing on the costume itself. Now again, all of the costumes for every character within Marvel's Avengers is purely a cosmetic item. But regardless, I still love the heavy amount of lore that each suit entails. And luckily for my second to last pick, it's not going to be all that hard to understand. Now this costume in particular, besides the Sam Raimi suit itself, was one of the most requested costumes to be inputted within Spider-Man PS4's DLC costume packs. And while you could possibly pull this suit off as a variant of the classic suit, I personally believe there's a lot more than meets the eye. Especially how this is considered to be a fan favorite costume, which is none other than the sensational Spider-Man himself with that of Ben Reilly. Now you all might know Ben Reilly as the clone of Spider-Man by another name with that of the Scarlet Spider. But during a moment in time within the comics where the original Peter Parker was nowhere to be found, Ben Reilly himself actually took up the Spider-Man mantle. And in doing so, he ended up revitalizing the classic Spider-Man costume to fit his personal design aesthetic. Primarily with that of the massive black spider which surrounds the entirety of the upper torso, followed by the web shooters which are actually on the outside of the costume rather than on the inside. I do think this is Marvel's second chance to give us just that, and if it ends up actually being in the game, that might just be one of my go-to suits to wear while playing as Spidey. And finally, to finish off my suit list with another interpretation of Spider-Man who's also considered to be a villain. But even though this specific version of Spider-Man may be on the side of evil, I still really dig the overall suit that he is donning. And in this case, we're talking about the heavy-hitting assassin of Michael Bingham, also known as the Blood Spider. So based on the synopsis that we have of Blood Spider himself, Michael Bingham was a deadly assassin trained directly by Taskmaster in order to take down Spider-Man. Michael then trained alongside hero knockoffs of the other Avengers, mainly with that of Hawkeye's doppelganger of Jagged Bow and Captain America's doppelganger of Death Shield, in order to mimic his target's combat style and abilities. And even though his wall crawling and web shooting doesn't come naturally, Blood Spider instead relies on a mechanical backpack connected to his shooters on his wrists. Visually, his suit is very close to the one that we see for Spider-Man 2099, and even though he might be on the side of evil, he still has a pretty interesting look which differentiates itself from the other suits on this list. Again, there was a total of 42 costumes within Spider-Man PS4 alone after every single piece of DLC was added into the game post-launch. And even though we don't know how many suits will be included for each hero at launch for Marvel's Avengers, I am still very curious to see exactly what Crystal Dynamics' take on Spider-Man is going to be visually and aesthetically. But with all that said, everyone, that's the video I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. What did you think of my personal top 5 picks for the suits that I would love to see for Spider-Man within Marvel's Avengers, and please let me know your personal picks as well. If I had to choose any one of the suits from my list to be featured in Marvel's Avengers, I would easily go with the Advanced suit simply because of how dang gorgeous it is. And if you're someone who wants to hear another top 5 Spider-Man suit list for Marvel's Avengers, I would highly recommend to check out my buddy Carlos's YouTube channel, also known as The Initiative, to learn about everything and anything pertaining to Marvel's Avengers. And if you found my list intriguing, I definitely think you'll get a kick out of Carlos's list as well. But until next time, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy, and peace out.
So, you're the Spider-Man here?
I was. They've given me the name Blood Spider because they want to feed on me. I'm the last superhero in Manhattan. But who are you, and why do you have my powers?
I'm Spider-Man too. We both are, but from different universes. I know, it sounds strange.